From the world of John Wick, Ballerina. And in case that title isn't clear enough, Ballerina is the latest film from the John Wick universe. And it takes place between the third and fourth chapters in the mainline John Wick films, but it does not require you to have really watched the other films or the Continental TV show. There are a few rules and odd bits of lore that will be clearer if you have seen the other films, but they are not essential. This is directed by Len Wiseman, director of Die Hard 4 and the Total Recall remake back in 2012, and the IMDb description for this film reads, "An assassin trained in the traditions of the Ruska Roma organization sets out to seek revenge after her father's death." Now, before I get into the review, I want to briefly talk about the production because I've seen a bit of discourse around its supposedly troubled production cycle. It was originally intended for release back in summer 2024, but it was delayed due to reshoots. There are reports of Chad Stahelski, the director of the mainline films, coming on to help with those reshoots, but I did read a few articles around this, and I did find one that had an interview with Len Wiseman where he said the reshoots took place because Lionsgate liked what they had put together so far, but the original script had to be cut due to budget constraints. So they decided to go back and fill in what they had originally cut because they liked the direction the project was going in. But I am happy to say that despite all of these different reports, I think the film turned out pretty good. Are the reshoots noticeable? To a degree, yes. The tone is perhaps a little inconsistent, and it's a film that in one breath wants to tell a proper origin story, and in another just wants to get to its next all-out action set piece. And it can feel at odds with itself because of it, but none of this stops it from being a really damn good time. I'm a big fan of the John Wick films. They feature stunning choreography with wild, extended set pieces. They are awesome, relentless films, and Ballerina is cut from the same cloth. Coupled with some great sound design, there are some really fantastic sequences in this film, including one standout with a flamethrower. And just like the John Wick films, it's well shot and you really feel the weight of every hit. Ana de Armas is perfect in the lead here, and despite its cliched revenge story beats, she really sells it, and it's really fun to watch her skills as an assassin improve as the film goes on. Early on in the film, she is taught to improvise, and this leads to increasingly more fun and frantic set pieces. And this might be a bit of a reach, but I did like the fact that there's a fair bit of use of ice in this film, which to me felt like a fun way of showing her trying to really find her balance. I think it's also nice to see a protagonist in this universe that shows a bit more emotion than we're used to, something John Wick himself is too cool and calculated for. Ana de Armas as Eve really brings the fire amongst the ice. So it's a little over 2 hours, but I think it's well paced. It has a much slower first half that is more story driven, more serious in its tone, but the second act really finds a great flow from one set piece to another. And as I'm sure you've seen in the trailers, it does feature John Wick himself. Now luckily I don't think he casts too much of a shadow here. I was worried his cameo would stop the film dead in its tracks, but luckily it doesn't, and they do make good use of him, even if they do go to great lengths to remind you just how legendary he is and how Eve couldn't possibly best him. And when it comes to the main antagonist of the film, there have been much worse and there have been much better. It's all very typical of the John Wick world, and it's perfectly serviceable. All in all, I think this is just a really fun, thrilling cinema trip. It does not match the highs of the mainline films, and you can feel the slight structural conflicts at times, whether it's through some messy editing, obvious ADR rewrites and reshoots, or some strange tonal shifts from one scene to another. And none of this really bothered me because when a flamethrower is laying waste to everything on screen, I'm just really enjoying the show. And of course, it was wonderful to see Lance Reddick on screen again after we sadly lost him in 2023. So I would recommend you check this one out, especially at the cinema. I'm feeling a 7 out of 10 on this one, and that's all I really have to say. So if you did like this review, please do consider subscribing. Let me know what you thought of the film in the comments. But thank you very much for watching.